Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In today's episode, we delve into a chilling case that rocked the quiet town of Conroe, Texas in the sweltering summer of 1997. A case that posed the question, can a face of an angel mask the heart of a devil? We unravel the story of a beauty queen who, behind her dazzling smile, harbored deadly secrets and unscrupulous ambitions. In the heart of Montgomery County, Conroe, Texas, David John Hall was a familiar face, known for his geniality and strong work ethic. At 39, David had established a stable career as a procurement manager at Derricks and Cables, a reputable pump jack supply company catering to the robust oil industry of the Lone Star State. A graduate of the University of Houston's Cullen College of Engineering, David had translated his academic prowess into a promising career, providing for his family in the burgeoning economic climate of the late 90s. David resided with his family in a modest, well-kept home in the Woodland Estates, a neighborhood that echoed with the laughter of children and the hum of lawnmowers on weekends. His life was deeply intertwined with his high school sweetheart, Donna, a former Miss Montgomery County, and their daughter, Victoria, a bright 16-year-old with aspirations that mirrored her mother's pageantry success. In the days preceding his untimely demise, David's focus was on the future. He had been avidly following the news of the Pathfinder probe's Mars landing, drawing parallels between the mission's pioneering spirit and his own dreams for his daughter's education. David was inspired by the era's technological advancements and hoped to instill this sense of wonder and ambition in Victoria. David was a man who valued education, often sporting his University of Houston cap during weekend barbecues, where he would grill steaks and reminisce about his college days with neighbors. His relationship with his mother, Lorette, was one of deep affection and mutual respect, often highlighted by their shared love for the Houston Astros, despite the team's middling performance that season. Described by colleagues as the kind of man who always had time for others, David was gearing up for a family vacation to the Texas Gulf Coast, a much-needed respite from the sweltering summer heat. Unbeknownst to him, the days leading up to his death would be the final chapters of a life cut tragically short, a narrative that would soon grip the community and expose the darkest facets of human nature. The morning of June 18, 1997, dawned like any other in Conroe, Texas, with the promise of another sweltering summer day. The local radio stations were abuzz with the latest chart toppers setting the tone for what should have been a carefree start to the day. But for the employees of Derricks and Cables, the day would take a harrowing turn. At approximately 7:30 a.m., as the early rays of the sun glistened off the chrome of the parked pickup trucks, Jim Walters, a colleague and friend of David John Hall, arrived at the company's gravel lot. The air was thick with humidity, a precursor to the oppressive heat that would soon envelop the town. Jim, a field technician, was looking forward to discussing the Chicago Bulls' recent victory over the Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals, a topic that had dominated water-cooler conversations. However, as Jim approached his usual parking spot, he was met with a scene that would haunt him for years to come. There, beside his blue Ford F-150, lay the lifeless body of David John Hall. The sight of David John, so still against the gravel, was a stark contrast to the vibrant man Jim had known. His instinctive response was to rush to his friend's side, but the grim reality set in, and he recoiled in shock. Struggling to process the scene before him, Jim fumbled with his Motorola StarTAC cell phone to dial 911. His voice trembled as he spoke with the dispatcher, the gravity of the situation rendering him nearly speechless. He reported the discovery of David John's body, noting the absence of any visible weapon, and provided his location to the authorities. The Conroe Police Department responded with urgency, their vehicles cutting through the light morning traffic. The community, largely insulated from violent crime, was about to be thrust into the spotlight, with local news outlets descending upon the town to cover the unfolding tragedy. As the police secured the area, bystanders gathered at a distance, exchanging whispers and glances that spoke of their collective disbelief. The tranquility of their small town had been shattered, and the ripple effects of David John Hall's death would soon reveal a sinister undercurrent that had long flowed beneath the surface of Conroe's serene facade. The swift arrival of the Conroe Police Department at the Derricks and Cables lot was a testament to the severity of the call received at 7:32 a.m. on that fateful June morning. Led by Detective Charlene Loomis, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, and her partner, Detective Mark Jenkins, known for his methodical approach, the team set out to piece together the final moments of David John Hall's life. The crime scene was a stark juxtaposition to the usual bustle of the industrial area, which lay eerily silent except for the murmurs of the growing crowd and the distant hum of morning traffic. The detectives noted the lack of visible disturbances around the body, no signs of a scuffle or attempted robbery. David John lay adjacent to his pickup truck, his briefcase and a spilled cup from the local Java Joe's coffee shop beside him, painting a picture of a morning routine abruptly interrupted. Detective Loomis observed the clean trajectory of the bullet wound, suggesting a calculated, close-range shot. The absence of a weapon suggested that this was not a case of suicide but a deliberate act by an external assailant. The detectives cordoned off the area with yellow police tape, preserving the integrity of the crime scene as the forensics team arrived. Clad in their white suits, the forensics experts began their meticulous examination. They collected the spent shell casing and took swabs for gunpowder residue, while the crime scene photographer documented every angle. Detective Jenkins coordinated with the team to ensure that tire tracks and footprints were cast before the day's heat could compromise them. As they worked, the local media, including reporters from the Conroe Courier, gathered information from a distance, their cameras capturing the somber activity. The detectives remained tight-lipped, aware that every detail mattered and that the perpetrator was still at large. The investigation was already pointing to a premeditated murder, but the motive remained shrouded in mystery. With no immediate suspects, the detectives knew they had to delve deeper into David John's life to uncover the truth behind his untimely demise. In the summer of 1997, as the nation was gripped by the Mars Pathfinder mission's impending landing and the world mourned the loss of fashion icon Gianni Versace, Conroe, Texas, was facing its own turmoil. The local authorities were investigating the murder of David John Hall, and suspicion had fallen on 21-year-old Ulrich Barnard. Known locally for his rebellious streak and aspirations of skateboarding fame, Barnard's presence near the crime scene on the day of the murder drew immediate attention from law enforcement. Barnard, who spent most of his days practicing kickflips at Candy Cane Park, was no stranger to the Conroe Police Department. His previous misdemeanors, mostly for petty theft and vandalism, had made him a recognizable figure to the officers. On the day of Hall's murder, several witnesses reported seeing Barnard at the nearby 7-Eleven, a mere 5-minute skate from the Pump Jack Supply Company where the body was discovered. During a tense interrogation, Barnard sat across from Detective Charlene Loomis, his demeanor a cocktail of defiance and agitation. The room, stark and sterile, was filled with the sound of a whirring fan attempting to cut through the thick Texas heat. Barnard's alibi was that he had been at the local skate shop, purchasing a new set of wheels for his board, a fact corroborated by a receipt timestamped an hour before the murder was estimated to have occurred. Despite his alibi, Barnard's proximity to the crime scene and his known disdain for Hall, stemming from a public altercation at a community event the previous month, kept him squarely in the crosshairs of suspicion. The interrogation stretched on, with detectives pressing for inconsistencies in his story. Yet, no direct evidence linked him to the crime, and with a solid alibi, the focus of the investigation began to shift. The case against Ulrich Barnard, while initially compelling to the Conroe police, was unraveling. The detectives were left to consider the unsettling possibility that the killer was still at large, moving freely within the unsuspecting community of Conroe. As the investigation continued, the authorities hoped that emerging leads would guide them to the true perpetrator behind the tragic death of David John Hall. The summer of 1997 was a period of national attention on the cloning debate after the birth of Dolly the sheep and Microsoft's release of Internet Explorer 4. Meanwhile, the small town of Conroe, Texas, was grappling with a second tragedy. Just 2 months following the murder of David John Hall, his mother, Lorette Hall, aged 67, was found deceased in the parking lot of the Conroe Recreation Center. Lorette, a retired schoolteacher with a penchant for literature and a regular at the weekly bingo nights held at the rec center, was discovered by fellow bingo enthusiasts who had arrived early to secure their lucky seats. The scene was a stark contrast to the lively atmosphere that typically filled the rec center, which now featured police tape and flashing lights from the squad cars. The Conroe Police Department, still deep into the investigation of her son's murder, was now facing the grim task of unraveling the circumstances surrounding Lorette's death. The local news outlets, including the Courier of Montgomery County, quickly picked up the story, and the community watched in horror as the Hall family was struck by another blow. Detective Charlene Loomis, who had been leading the investigation into David John's murder, was once again on the scene, her face a mask of professional detachment as she surveyed the area. The initial assessment suggested that Lorette had been the victim of a violent assault. Her purse was missing, leading to early speculation about a robbery gone wrong. As the news of Lorette's death spread through Conroe, residents gathered at local establishments like the Waffle House, discussing in hushed tones the possibility of a connection between the two deaths. The sense of safety that once permeated the town was now replaced by a cloud of suspicion and fear. The investigation into Lorette Hall's death was intensifying, with detectives considering all angles, including the chilling prospect that the murders of mother and son were perpetrated by the same individual. The community of Conroe, still reeling from the initial murder, now found itself at the epicenter of a potential serial crime, with more questions than answers. On the morning of August 25, 1997, as Conroe, Texas, braced itself for another day under the relentless summer sun, the investigative team of the Conroe Police Department received a call that would inject new momentum into the Hall murder case. The skies were clear, and the air was still, a stark contrast to the turbulent developments that were about to unfold. A local pawnshop owner, Earl Jenkins, had been sorting through his inventory when he stumbled upon an item that sent a chill down his spine. Among the myriad of objects that passed through his shop, a recently pawned handgun stood out. It was not its make or model, a common Smith & Wesson revolver, that caught his attention, but rather the timing of its acquisition and the nervous demeanor of the individual who had pawned it. Earl, recalling the details of the Hall murders that had been extensively covered by the Houston Chronicle, felt a civic duty to alert the authorities. The weapon matched the description provided by the police of the suspected murder weapon. With no hesitation, he reached for his landline, the cord stretching across the counter as he dialed the number for the Conroe Police Department. Detectives Loomis and Jenkins arrived promptly, their Ford Crown Victoria police cruiser reflecting the morning light as they parked in front of the pawnshop, nestled between a Radio Shack and a Blockbuster video store. They entered the establishment, the bell above the door announcing their arrival. Earl handed over the revolver with a solemn nod, understanding the gravity of his discovery. The forensics team was immediately dispatched to the pawnshop. They collected the revolver, ensuring it was properly bagged and tagged for evidence. Back at the station, the ballistics experts worked diligently, comparing the markings on the bullets recovered from the crime scenes with those test-fired from the revolver. The results were conclusive. It was a match. This breakthrough evidence reinvigorated the investigation, providing a tangible link to the killer. The detectives knew that tracing the history of the weapon would be crucial. Who had pawned the gun? And more importantly, how had it ended up in their possession? The answers to these questions would prove pivotal in solving the tragic murders of David John Hall and his mother Lorette. Victoria Vicky Hall, at 16 years old, found herself in the midst of a nightmare scenario. The Conroe High School student, known for her aspirations in the local beauty pageant circuit, was the daughter and granddaughter of the victims. In the days following the shocking events, she maintained a semblance of normalcy, attending rehearsals for the upcoming Stars Over Texas pageant, a regional precursor to the state competition. Vicky's world, however, was far from the glitz and glamour of the stage. As the Conroe Police Department deepened their investigation, they began to scrutinize her as a possible suspect. On August 30, 1997, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the interrogation room, Vicky sat across from detectives Loomis and Jenkins. The detectives, aware of the delicate nature of questioning a minor, proceeded with caution. The interrogation was a stark contrast to the celebratory mood that had swept Conroe when the Houston Comets had won their inaugural game in the newly formed WNBA. Vicky, composed yet visibly fatigued by the ordeal, answered the detectives' inquiries. She recounted her whereabouts, her relationship with her family, and her activities in the days leading up to the murders. Her responses were measured and her demeanor cooperative, though the weight of suspicion cast a shadow over her youthful dreams. Vicky spoke of her passion for pageantry, her desire to follow in her mother's footsteps, and her ambition to one day grace the stage as Miss Texas. Yet, these dreams felt distant as she navigated the harsh reality of her family's tragedy. The detectives took note of Vicky's composure, considering the psychological toll the situation would exact on someone so young. They were methodical in their approach, cross-referencing her statements with evidence and alibis. As the interrogation concluded, the detectives stepped out into the sweltering Texas heat, the air heavy with unanswered questions and the burden of the badges they bore. The oppressive heat of a Texas summer in Conroe was a fitting backdrop for the investigation that was about to reach its boiling point. Donna Hall, age 38, former Miss Montgomery County, and the wife of the late David John Hall, had maintained a composed facade throughout the ordeal. Her beauty pageant poise had served her well in the public eye, but behind closed doors, the detectives were beginning to see through the cracks. On September 10, 1997, Detective Charlene Loomis sat across from Donna in an interrogation room that felt even more stifling than the weather outside. Donna, with her carefully styled hair and manicured nails, seemed a picture of suburban sophistication. Yet, as the detectives probed, her veneer began to slip. She spoke of her life as David John's wife, her volunteer work at the St. Vincent, Delaware Paul thrift store, and her role as a mother to Vicky. However, when questioned about her financial situation, Donna's composure wavered. The Hall family had appeared to be the embodiment of the American dream, yet the reality was a tangled web of debt and deception. Donna's gambling addiction had been a well-kept secret, one that had driven her to desperate measures. The detectives presented the evidence of the pawned revolver, linking it to Donna through a series of transactions that traced back to the local casino's ATM receipts, timestamped and indisputable. As the interrogation continued, Donna's resolve crumbled. The detectives learned of her mounting debts and the life insurance policies taken out on David, John, and Lorette. It became clear that Donna's angelic exterior masked a heart capable of devising a devilish plan for profit. The case that had baffled the Conroe Police Department was unraveling, revealing a narrative of greed that had culminated in the cold-blooded murder of a husband and mother-in-law. Donna Hall, once revered for her charm and grace, stood accused of orchestrating a deadly scheme that would shock the community to its core. Under the relentless glare of the summer sun on September 15, 1997, the Conroe Police Department made their way to the Hall residence, a place once filled with the warmth of a family and now the epicenter of a chilling investigation. The community of Conroe, still reeling from the recent shockwaves sent by the UPS workers' strike, found itself grappling with a different kind of unrest that hit closer to home. Donna Hall, the 38-year-old former beauty queen and matriarch of the Hall family, was about to face the consequences of her actions. As the detectives approached, the neighborhood was quiet, save for the distant sounds of children playing and the occasional bark of a dog, a stark contrast to the turmoil about to unfold within the walls of the Hall home. The police, with a warrant in hand, knocked on the door. Donna answered, her appearance as polished as ever, though her eyes betrayed a hint of the anxiety that lay beneath her calm exterior. She was read her rights, a recitation that seemed to echo ominously through the halls of the once happy home. Upon being placed in handcuffs, Donna's facade finally cracked. The reality of her arrest for the murders of her husband and mother-in-law caused her to stagger, and for a moment, she leaned against the frame of the family's Chevrolet Suburban parked in the driveway. Her expression was one of disbelief, her mind seemingly unable to reconcile the image of suburban housewife with that of a murder suspect. News of the arrest spread quickly, with local stations interrupting scheduled programming to broadcast the latest development. The media, armed with cameras and microphones, descended upon the scene, capturing the moment Donna was escorted to the squad car. The image of her, once celebrated in the glossy pages of local pageants, now flashed across TV screens, a stark symbol of the tragedy that had unfolded. The Hall family, particularly daughter Vicky, watched as the woman who had been their pillar was taken away in disgrace. Friends and neighbors stood by in stunned silence, their gazes following the police car as it drove away, taking with it the remnants of a family's shattered innocence. The trial of Donna Hall commenced amidst a media frenzy, with the courtroom in Conroe, Texas, becoming the focal point of national attention in the fall of 1997. The prosecutor, Gracie May Price, a tenacious and seasoned attorney in her mid-40s, presented a narrative of greed and deception that riveted those in attendance. She detailed how Donna, once a celebrated local beauty queen, had let her hidden gambling addiction drive her to the ultimate sin, the murder of her husband, David John, and her mother-in-law, Lorette. Defense attorney Jackson Reed, a silver-haired and eloquent speaker known for his persuasive courtroom demeanor, painted a different picture. He sought to humanize Donna, portraying her as a victim of circumstance, trapped by an addiction that clouded her judgment and compelled her to actions that were out of character. The trial took place against the backdrop of a nation gripped by the mysterious death of designer Gianni Versace and the global anticipation of the release of the first Harry Potter book. Yet, within the confines of the Montgomery County Courthouse, the spectacle of Donna Hall's trial commanded its own audience. The victims' families sat in the courtroom each day, their faces etched with the pain and betrayal of a loved one's loss. Their emotions fluctuated between sorrow and anger, a silent testament to the impact of Donna's alleged crimes. After weeks of testimonies, evidence examination, and fervent legal debates, the jury returned with a verdict. Donna Hall was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The judge, solemn and resolute, sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was met with mixed reactions, some feeling justice had been served, while others debated the complexities of the human psyche that could lead to such a tragedy. As the gavel fell, the effects of the verdict rippled through the courtroom. For Donna, it was the end of the line. For the victim's friends and family, it was a somber resolution to a chapter of their lives they wished had never been written. In the wake of Donna Hall's conviction and sentencing, the town of Conroe, Texas, slowly began to turn the page on a chapter that had captivated and horrified its residents. The summer of 1997, with its notorious headlines, from the Mars Pathfinder's historic odyssey to the international uproar over Princess Diana's tragic death, had also witnessed the unraveling of one of its own domestic tragedies. Victoria Vicky Hall, now a high school senior, faced the world without her parents, her aspirations of beauty pageant glory long since abandoned. She found solace in her studies, seeking a fresh start, her sights set on a journalism degree, a pursuit inspired, in part, by the diligent reporters who had covered her family story with a mix of sensitivity and the relentless pursuit of truth. Detectives Charlene Loomis and Mark Jenkins, the architects behind the case's resolution, continued their service with the Conroe Police Department, their careers forever marked by the Hall case. Their success in bringing Donna to justice bolstered their reputations as 2 of the department's finest. Ulrich Barnard, the local delinquent once suspected of involvement in the murders, seized the opportunity for a clean slate. He moved to Austin, Texas, where the burgeoning tech scene of the late 90s offered new beginnings far from the skate parks and suspicions of Conroe. The Hall family and friends, particularly those who had known Donna in her pageant days, grappled with a complex mix of emotions. The woman they had admired for her poise and community involvement was now a convicted murderer. Some found forgiveness, while others harbored a lingering sense of betrayal. As the years passed, the memory of David John and Laurette Hall lingered in the community. Annual memorials were held, not only as a tribute to their lives but as a reminder of the fragility of trust and the sometimes hidden turmoil within seemingly perfect lives. Conroe, much like the rest of the world, moved forward, the echoes of the past serving as a cautionary tale for the future. The Hall story, with its stark juxtaposition of beauty and darkness, remained a poignant narrative of the human condition. The case of Donna Hall serves as a harrowing reminder of the depths of human duplicity. A beauty queen's fall from grace, driven by greed and addiction, led to the ultimate betrayal. In Conroe, Texas, the summer of 1997 will forever be remembered as the season when the face of an angel revealed the heart of a devil. Thank you for joining us on True Crime Case Files. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover another story where truth is stranger than fiction. Hey, True Crime Case Solvers, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe, True Crime Case Solvers.